Thank you very much for your time and receiving us here at the MinRex building.
Thank you for having me.
Deputy Foreign Minister, how would you describe the nature of the most recent migration wave of Cubans to the United States?
It's mainly an economic migration of people that, given the very difficult economic situation of Cuba today, they try to find improvement abroad. And combined with the fact that they are practically invited or have been invited to go to the United States with a very flexible policy, then they have taken the decision to migrate. And that in a very limited amount of words tells you the nature of this migration.
How would you assess the U.S. migration policy towards Cuba over the past 60 years?
The U.S. has used migration historically for several decades as an instrument of destabilization against Cuba. And it's a reality of developing countries, of people who want to migrate to the north, to more developed countries. But what's peculiar, what's singular in the case of Cuba, what's unique, is that you have the combination of a policy of the United States of coercive economic measures, what we call the economic blockade, which depresses the living standards of the population, makes life economically difficult for them, which pushes them to migrate, and at the same time a very flexible and privileged treatment once they reach the border by whatever means. If you add to that legislation, the Cuban Adjustment Act, it allows Cubans, sole citizens of any country in the world, that within a year can become residents in the United States.
The U.S. Donald Trump administration has announced mass deportations of migrants. Is Cuba ready, or would Cuba accept mass deportation of Cubans? Is that part of the bilateral migration talks?
Mass deportation is not within the agreements. And we have expressed to the U.S. government, and we have expressed publicly, that it is unrealistic to believe that there can be and should be a mass deportation of Cubans. And it is also unfair to do so. These people have made their lives in the United States, they have jobs, they have properties, they have families in the US. So it's very unfair to try to deport them massively back to Cuba.
Most recently, the United States has used its visa granting services against medical missions from Cuba. What do you have to say about that?
They have threatened the governments of countries that have bilateral cooperation agreements with Cuba in the area of health. They have threatened them of their officials involved with these programs of not having the possibility to enjoy a visa to travel to the United States, because if the country has cooperation from Cuba. Thousands of Cubans during decades have participated, and this has been praised by many governments, by several Secretary Generals of the UN, because it's a way of providing health in a legitimate way based on bilateral agreements between countries. And the United States is trying to interfere there with the threat of the visas.
Thank you very much for your interview and your time.
Great pleasure.